There is something powerful, something magnetic, and even something unsettling about the art of ignoring. When it comes to relationships, when it comes to how men and women interact, ignoring a woman carries with it both a subtle power and a dangerous risk. It is not simply silence. It is not just pulling away. It is a psychological tool that can shift dynamics, stir emotions, and influence the way she thinks and feels about you. But like every powerful tool, it has a light side and a dark side. Use it wrongly, and you break her spirit or destroy any chance of connection. Use it wisely, and you command respect, shift her attention, and create attraction that cannot be ignored. Ignoring a woman is not about cruelty. It is not about punishment. It is about understanding the psychology of human behavior, how absence affects desire, how silence creates tension, and how scarcity builds value. Too often, men get caught in the trap of over-giving, over-explaining, over-chasing. They believe that the more attention they give, the more affection they will receive. And yet, the opposite often happens. The more you smother her with attention, the less she values it. The more available you make yourself, the less desirable you appear. It is in the space you create, in the silence, in the restraint, that she begins to notice your presence more deeply. There is a principle in psychology called the law of scarcity. Human beings value what they cannot easily have. When you are too available, your value decreases. When you become scarce, your presence becomes more significant. Ignoring, when done with intention, leverages this law. When you don't respond immediately, when you don't always jump to her call, when you don't allow her every demand to dictate your attention, she begins to wonder why. She begins to think about you more, not less. Her mind fills in the gaps created by your silence, and those gaps make her curious, sometimes even obsessed. But here is where the darkness of ignoring begins, because this tool, if misused, becomes manipulation. If you ignore her to break her, if you ignore her to punish her, if you use silence as a weapon rather than a boundary, you are not building respect. You are destroying trust. And women are intuitive. They can sense when your silence comes from strength and when it comes from immaturity. True power in ignoring does not come from coldness. It comes from self-control. It is the ability to choose silence when you could speak, to walk away when you could fight, to create space when your emotions want to cling. That restraint is what makes her rethink her behavior, her value of you, and her willingness to invest more into the relationship. The art of ignoring is really about creating contrast. Think about music. It is not the constant stream of notes that makes a song beautiful. It is the pauses, the silence between the sounds, that create rhythm and emotion. In relationships, attention and silence work the same way. If you are always attentive, always present, always available, your attention loses its impact. But if you learn to pull back, to withhold, to allow moments of silence, your attention becomes a gift rather than a given. She notices it. She values it. She craves it. This is why ignoring can be one of the most powerful psychological triggers for attraction. When a woman feels like she has your complete focus at all times, she feels secure, but she doesn't necessarily feel desire. Desire is born from uncertainty, from curiosity, from not knowing. When you ignore strategically, you create that uncertainty. You make her wonder what you're doing, who you're with, and why you're not available. This doesn't mean you play childish games of disappearing to cause panic. It means you live your life fully without making her the center of your universe. It means you have priorities, passions, and boundaries that do not bend every time she calls. That independence is what makes her want to pull closer. But understand this, clearly ignoring is not ghosting. Ignoring is not cutting someone off without reason. Ghosting breeds resentment. Ignoring, in its artful form, is about measured absence. It's about choosing when not to engage, when not to reply instantly, when not to react emotionally. It is about silence that teaches respect, not silence that breeds confusion. Women test boundaries. They push buttons. Sometimes they will provoke you just to see if you will lose control. If you always react, if you always defend, if you always explain, you fall into their frame. But when you ignore with calmness, when you don't react to every poke, you show strength. You show emotional discipline. That discipline is rare, and it's attractive. Now let's explore the dark psychology behind ignoring. Human emotions are wired in such a way that attention equals validation. When you give someone attention, you validate their worth in your life. When you withdraw that attention, you create a psychological vacuum. That vacuum demands to be filled, and the mind begins to spiral with questions. Did I do something wrong? Has he lost interest? Why isn't he responding? That uncertainty causes an emotional pull, anxiety, longing, even obsession. Women, just like men, are vulnerable to this pull. When you ignore, you activate her need to restore balance. She wants to win back your attention, to feel secure again in your presence. This is why ignoring, when used correctly, can flip the power dynamic in a relationship. But let me warn you, dark psychology is dangerous. Because if you ignore too much, if you abuse this tool, you don't create attraction, you create bitterness. A woman who feels consistently neglected will not chase you forever. She will withdraw, she will protect her heart, and she will move on. Ignoring must be balanced with genuine attention, with moments of warmth that reassure her she is valued. Too much silence, and you starve the relationship. The art lies in the balance, knowing when to speak and when to hold back, when to be present and when to disappear, when to give and when to deny. Some men fear that ignoring will push her away. But the truth is, if ignoring makes her leave, she was never truly invested to begin with. If the bond is shallow, silence will expose it. If the bond is deep, silence will test it and strengthen it. Because when she feels that absence, she will either fight to close the gap or accept that she was never truly yours. In either case, you win. You either deepen the bond with someone who values you, or you free yourself from someone who never did. Ignoring also teaches respect. When you ignore behavior that is toxic, disrespectful, or manipulative, you send a clear message without saying a word. You show that you will not engage in petty arguments, that you will not be dragged into emotional traps, that you will not reward bad behavior with attention. This kind of ignoring is not about playing games. It is about protecting your peace. And a woman may resist it at first, but deep down, she respects it. She respects a man who does not get rattled, who does not react emotionally, who knows his value enough to walk away rather than argue. The danger, however, is in confusing ignoring with neglect. A relationship cannot survive on silence alone. Ignoring is a tool, not a lifestyle. It is a strategy, not a solution. It must always be followed by moments of attention, connection, and communication. The silence makes the attention powerful, but without the attention, the silence becomes abandonment, and abandonment breeds resentment, not desire. The art and dark psychology of ignoring a woman is really about balance. It is about using absence to increase value, using silence to show strength, and using restraint to command respect. But it is also about knowing when to re-engage, when to communicate, when to show warmth. Too much presence kills desire. Too much absence kills the bond. The power lies in the middle ground, where your silence makes her crave your attention, and your attention feels like a reward, not a routine. In the end, the art of ignoring is not about her. It is about you. It is about mastering your emotions, controlling your reactions, and valuing your time and energy. It is about refusing to be manipulated by her moods, her tests, or her games. It is about living your life with such focus and discipline that your attention becomes a privilege, not something she takes for granted. When you live this way, when you master this balance, you don't just make her think about you. You make her respect you, desire you, and value the moments you choose to give. Ignoring a woman is not as simple as silence. It is not merely the act of not replying to her call, not answering her message, or pretending she doesn't exist for a while. It is far deeper, far more layered, and far more psychological than many people ever realize. The art of ignoring is about understanding human behavior, how emotions respond to absence, and how the mind interprets silence. To ignore a woman is to play with the most sensitive part of her psyche, the part that constantly seeks attention, validation, and reassurance. When you deny that validation, you don't just create distance, you trigger a storm inside her mind. She begins to replay memories, to question her own worth, to wonder what has changed and why you are no longer responding in the way she expects. This is why ignoring a woman is powerful. It does not end in the moment. It echoes in her thoughts long after the silence has begun. Think about how the human mind works. We are wired to notice what is missing far more than what is present. If someone texts you every single morning and suddenly stops, the silence screams louder than the daily words ever did. If someone always shows up for you, always gives you attention, and then withdraws even slightly, the absence becomes deafening. It forces the mind to fill in the blanks with assumptions, stories, fears, and desires. And when it comes to a woman, that silence you create by ignoring her is not just quiet. It is a mirror that reflects back her insecurities, her need for attention, and her attachment to you. The echo of your absence becomes more powerful than your constant presence ever was. This is why ignoring works as a psychological trigger. It shifts the balance of power without a single word spoken. A woman who is used to being pursued suddenly feels the chase slipping away. A woman who is used to being validated suddenly feels invisible. And that change doesn't just sit quietly in her heart. It forces her into action. She wants to understand. She wants to restore the dynamic she is comfortable with. She wants to know why your attention is no longer freely given. And so, she thinks about you more. She replays the last conversations. She reads between the lines of your silence. In many cases, she begins to crave the very thing you are withholding, your attention. But ignoring is not simply about gaining her attention. It is about demonstrating your control. Most men fail because they cannot control their emotions. They feel the urge to text back instantly, to call when she pulls away, to argue when she provokes them. They cannot handle silence because silence makes them anxious. But when you master the art of ignoring, you show that you are not ruled by impulse. You show that you can control your need to respond, your need to explain, your need to prove yourself. That kind of control is rare, and because it is rare, it is powerful. It unsettles her. It makes her reconsider her perception of you. It makes her respect you, even if she doesn't admit it. The dark psychology of ignoring is rooted in this very dynamic, because the moment you stop reacting, you stop feeding her emotional expectations. If she expected you to chase when she pulled away, but you remain calm and distant, her strategy fails. If she expected you to explain yourself during an argument, but you choose silence, she loses her control over you. If she expected you to beg for her time and energy, but you simply focus on your own life instead, she begins to question her influence on you. And when a woman questions her influence, she feels the need to reassert it, often by coming closer to you, often by trying harder, often by giving more of herself to regain what she feels slipping away. But there is a darkness here too. Ignoring can be cruel when it is used without purpose. Silence can destroy rather than strengthen. If you ignore her not out of self-control but out of immaturity, she will see through it. If you withdraw attention not because you are centered, but because you are afraid, it will not inspire respect, it will provoke pity or even resentment. The real art lies in ignoring with intention. Not because you are weak, but because you are strong. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you know silence says more. Not because you are trying to manipulate her, but because you refuse to be manipulated by her. Imagine a moment where she tries to provoke you.